Imagine a building that looks like a giant jukebox. Its vibrant colors and playful design immediately catch your eye, drawing you in with a sense of nostalgia and whimsy. This is not just a building, it's a statement, a piece of art that challenges the conventional notions of what architecture should be. The jukebox-inspired structure stands as a testament to the creativity and boldness of postmodern architecture, a movement that dared to break free from the rigid constraints of modernism. Now, picture a plaza adorned with colossal columns, a triumphal arch, and a cascading waterfall, all in vibrant colors. This is not your typical public space. It's a celebration of history, culture, and human ingenuity. The columns, reminiscent of ancient Greek and Roman architecture, stand tall and proud, while the triumphal arch evokes memories of grand historical events. The cascading waterfall adds a touch of nature, creating a serene and inviting atmosphere. This plaza is a perfect example of how postmodern architecture blends the old with the new, creating spaces that are both functional and aesthetically pleasing. These are not figments of a fever dream, but hallmarks of postmodern architecture. This architectural style emerged as a reaction against the austerity and uniformity of modernism, which dominated the mid-20th century. Postmodernism brought back ornamentation, color, and a sense of playfulness to architecture. It embraced eclecticism, drawing inspiration from various historical styles and combining them in unexpected ways. This approach resulted in buildings that are visually striking and rich in meaning, each one telling its own unique story. This playful and rebellious style emerged in the 1960s, challenging the austerity of modernism with a riot of colors, historical references, and a healthy dose of humor. Architects like Robert Venturi and Denise Scott Brown led the charge, advocating for a more inclusive and diverse approach to design. They believed that architecture should reflect the complexity and richness of human experience, rather than adhering to a set of rigid principles. This philosophy gave rise to buildings that are not only functional, but also engaging and thought-provoking. From the whimsical facade of Michael Graves's Portland building to the playful geometries of Charles Moore's Piazza d'Italia, postmodern architecture injected a much-needed sense of joy and irony into the urban landscape. The Portland building, with its bold colors and classical references, stands as a symbol of postmodernism's rejection of the bland and monotonous. Meanwhile, the Piazza d'Italia, with its playful use of classical elements and vibrant colors, creates a space that is both inviting and thought-provoking. These buildings are not just structures, they are works of art that challenge our perceptions and invite us to see the world in new and exciting ways. Postmodern architecture injected a much-needed sense of joy and irony into the urban landscape. It brought back the idea that buildings could be fun, that they could make us smile and think. This was a radical departure from the seriousness and austerity of modernism, which often prioritized function over form. Postmodernism, on the other hand, celebrated the idea that architecture could be both functional and beautiful, that it could tell stories and evoke emotions. This approach resulted in buildings that are not only practical, but also deeply meaningful and engaging. This architectural movement was more than just a stylistic departure. It was a cultural shift, a rejection of the rigid dogmas of the past in favor of inclusivity, pluralism, and a celebration of the human spirit. Postmodernism embraced diversity, drawing inspiration from a wide range of sources and creating spaces that reflect the complexity and richness of human experience. This approach resulted in buildings that are not only visually striking, but also deeply meaningful, each one telling its own unique story. It was a movement that celebrated the idea that architecture could be a reflection of our shared humanity, a way to connect with each other and the world around us. Buildings were no longer just machines for living, as Le Corbusier famously declared, but became stages for storytelling, social commentary, and a playful dialogue between past and present. Postmodern architects saw their work as a way to engage with the world, to create spaces that are not only functional, but also thought-provoking and meaningful. They believed that architecture should be a reflection of our shared humanity, a way to connect with each other and the world around us. This approach resulted in buildings that are not only practical, but also deeply engaging, each one telling its own unique story. Postmodern architecture dared to be different, to embrace complexity and contradiction, and to engage with the public in a more direct and meaningful way. It challenged the idea that buildings should be uniform and predictable, instead celebrating the idea that architecture could be diverse and eclectic. This approach resulted in buildings that are not only visually striking, but also deeply meaningful, each one telling its own unique story. Postmodernism embraced the idea that architecture could be a reflection of our shared humanity, a way to connect with each other and the world around us. It was a breath of fresh air in a world that had become increasingly standardized and impersonal. Postmodern architecture brought back the idea that buildings could be unique and personalized, that they could reflect the individuality and creativity of their designers. This approach resulted in spaces that are not only functional, but also deeply engaging, each one telling its own unique story. Postmodernism celebrated the idea that architecture could be a reflection of our shared humanity, a way to connect with each other and the world around us. It was a movement that dared to be different, to embrace complexity and contradiction, and to create spaces that are both beautiful and meaningful. To understand postmodernism, we must first understand its predecessor, modernism. Modernism was not just an architectural style, it was a movement that sought to break away from the past and embrace the future. It emerged in the early 20th century, a time of rapid industrialization and technological advancement. The world was changing, and modernist architects believed that architecture should reflect this new reality. This dominant architectural style of the early 20th century championed functionality, simplicity, and a rejection of ornamentation. Modernist architects believed that buildings should be designed for their intended purpose, without unnecessary decoration. They sought to create spaces that were efficient, practical, and free from the clutter of the past. Think clean lines, geometric forms, and a minimalist aesthetic. Modernist buildings were characterized by their use of simple shapes and forms, often arranged in a grid-like pattern. The emphasis was on clarity and order, with an underlying belief that architecture could improve society by promoting rationality and efficiency. While groundbreaking in its time, modernism, with its emphasis on rationality and efficiency, often resulted in buildings that were seen as sterile and impersonal. Critics argued that modernist buildings lacked warmth and character, and that their focus on functionality came at the expense of human experience. The stark, unadorned facades and rigid geometries could feel cold and uninviting, leading to a sense of alienation. Postmodernism emerged as a direct response to this perceived coldness. In the latter half of the 20th century, architects began to push back against the constraints of modernism. They sought to reintroduce elements of history, culture, and emotion into their designs, creating buildings that were more vibrant and expressive. Architects began to question modernism's utopian ideals and its disregard for history, context, and human emotion. They argued that architecture should not only serve practical needs, but also connect with people on a deeper level. This meant acknowledging the complexities of human experience and creating spaces that were rich in meaning and symbolism. They sought to create buildings that were not only functional but also engaging, meaningful, and reflective of the diversity of human experience. Postmodern architecture embraced a more eclectic approach, drawing on a wide range of influences and styles. This allowed for greater creativity and experimentation, resulting in buildings that were unique and memorable. This shift was not a complete rejection of modernism, but rather a reinterpretation and expansion of its principles. Postmodern architects recognized the value of modernism's emphasis on innovation and progress, but they sought to build on these ideas in new and exciting ways. By blending the old with the new, they created a more inclusive and dynamic architectural language. Postmodernists embraced the technological advancements and innovative materials of the modern era, but incorporated them in a way that was more playful, eclectic, and responsive to the human scale. They used color, texture, and ornamentation to create buildings that were visually stimulating and emotionally resonant. This approach allowed for a greater connection between architecture and the people who inhabit it, fostering a sense of belonging and community. One of the hallmarks of postmodern architecture is its use of historical references. Unlike modernism, which sought to break away from the past, postmodernism embraced it. Architects drew inspiration from a wide range of historical styles, from classical to Gothic to Baroque, and reinterpreted them in a contemporary context. This blending of old and new created a rich tapestry of architectural expression that was both familiar and innovative. Another key feature of postmodern architecture is its playfulness. Postmodern buildings often incorporate whimsical elements and unexpected details that challenge conventional notions of architecture. This sense of play can be seen in the use of bold colors, unusual shapes, and imaginative forms. By breaking the rules and pushing the boundaries, postmodern architects created buildings that were not only functional, but also fun and engaging. Postmodernism also embraced a diverse range of materials and construction techniques. Architects experimented with new technologies and materials, such as glass, steel, and concrete, to create innovative and cutting-edge designs. This willingness to explore new possibilities allowed for greater flexibility and creativity in architectural design, resulting in buildings that were both technologically advanced and aesthetically pleasing. In addition to their aesthetic qualities, postmodern buildings often prioritize social interaction and community engagement. Architects designed spaces that encourage people to come together, fostering a sense of connection and belonging. This focus on community is reflected in the inclusion of public spaces, such as plazas, courtyards, and gardens, which provide opportunities for social interaction and cultural exchange. Sustainability is another important aspect of postmodern architecture. As awareness of environmental issues has grown, architects have increasingly incorporated eco-friendly features into their designs. This includes the use of sustainable materials, energy-efficient systems, and green building practices. By prioritizing sustainability, postmodern architects are not only creating beautiful and functional buildings, but also contributing to a more sustainable future. Finally, postmodern architecture often reflects the cultural and historical context of its surroundings. Architects draw on local traditions, materials, and techniques to create buildings that are rooted in their specific place and time. This approach helps to preserve and celebrate cultural heritage, while also creating a sense of identity and continuity. In conclusion, postmodernism represents a reaction to the simplicity and rigidity of modernism. By embracing diversity, playfulness, and historical references, postmodern architects have created a rich and varied architectural landscape that reflects the complexity and richness of human experience. Through their innovative designs, they have challenged conventional notions of architecture and opened up new possibilities for the future.